Welcome back. I hope you're feeling refreshed and ready for part 2. I know I am. On the screen in front of you is a table that shows the best-selling drugs in the world in 2010. Note that the order is ranked by sales in US dollars. The pharma industry is, after all, money-driven. You will see 3 of the drugs have stars next to them: Enbrel, Remicade and Humira. Can you guess why? I know it's early in this video and you probably weren't expecting a question so early on, but I like to keep you on your toes. So have a little think. Have a little think. Got an answer? The answer is they are all biological drugs. Now, this is important because the types of medicines we generally think of are tablets and capsules. It's relatively easy to formulate drugs that are small molecular weight organic molecules in tablets and capsules, but biologics are a different matter entirely. Usually they are proteins, which brings a whole set of issues. They cannot usually be given orally because your stomach acid contains pepsin that will degrade them very quickly. So they are usually formulated as solutions for injection. This means a lot of the concepts we will discuss during pre-formulation don't apply to biologics. Happily, you can see that 7 of the best-selling drugs are small molecular weight organic molecules. However, the pharma industry doesn't stand still. Here is the equivalent table for 2020. Now the situation is reversed. 7 are biologics and only 3 are small molecular weight actives. I'm giving you this information not because I want to suggest my teaching topics are becoming irrelevant, but because I want you to see how the pharma world is changing. Change always presents challenges and opportunities. So if you are aware of what changes are happening, you can make sure you are best placed to take advantage. In this case, I would take a module about biological drugs. But I also want to reassure you that many drugs are still small molecular weight organic compounds, and they can still be blockbusters. So, we are safe to continue with the lecture. Why do we formulate drugs in the first place? After all, it seems to be quite a drama. A pharma drama, in fact, but I've already claimed that. Why would we not just give patients a spoon and a jar of powder and let them get on with it? I'll give you a few moments to see if you can think of any reasons while I drink some coffee. Have a think. Did you think of any? On the screen is my list, ordered in rank importance. Dose and taste are the big ones, as we shall see in a moment. So if you've got those, well done. The others relate to ease of manufacture and handling, but importantly, all can usually be accommodated for with careful formulation, which is the science of pharmaceutics or making medicines. Let's consider dose first. Dose is really important because we want to keep drug plasma concentrations within a therapeutic window, as we saw earlier. When you buy a packet of ibuprofen tablets that notionally contain 200 milligrams each, you want to know that they actually do. And the regulators, the MHRA in the UK and the FDA in the US, make sure that products do indeed contain the label claim. Usually there is a small tolerance in dose, maybe plus or minus 5 or 10%, but the manufacturer would need to justify and agree the limit with the regulator. However, sometimes the dose in a tablet can be very low. Oral contraceptive pills, for instance, contain just 50 micrograms of hormone in each tablet. That's a very small amount and presents a considerable challenge to manufacture. The majority of a contraceptive pill contains excipients, so ensuring each tablet contains only 50 micrograms is a huge challenge. It's 1/6000th the dose of a 300 milligram tablet, for instance. High-dose tablets are equally difficult, however, although for a different reason. The highest dose ibuprofen tablet I could find is 600 milligrams. Now, you might not have a feeling for how much a typical tablet weighs, but I would say that 450 to 500 milligrams would be typical. Therefore, a 600 milligram tablet will already be much bigger than usual, and that's before any excipients are added. You might say to me, okay, just compress the drug and don't add any excipient. That would be fine if the drug had just the right properties for compression, but usually this is very unusual. The excipients are added to help the tablet compress and have good mechanical strength. So if we are not careful, high-dose tablets end up being so large only a horse can swallow them. Finally, for dose anyway, I should note that there are some formulations which are dosed by the patient with a spoon. They're just not powders. They're solutions and suspensions like cough mixtures. Taste is the second most important reason for formulating. Most drugs, because they have a pharmacological action in the body, are bitter. This is nature's way of warning you that what you're about to eat might do you some damage, so it's perhaps not surprising. But taste is a huge barrier to patients taking medicines, especially in certain populations like the young. In my office, I have a whole book devoted to ibuprofen. This should not surprise you by now. It is in itself medicinal. It has no effect on pain, but it's fantastic for insomnia. In the middle of the book is the graph you can see on the screen in front of you. It shows the taste profile experienced by patients if they swallow ibuprofen. And we are talking about pure drug powder here, not formulated. I have no idea how these data were generated, but I assume it involved coercing students in some way. It is, however, very interesting. Ibuprofen generates two taste profiles in the mouth, an immediate and long-lasting bitterness, as well as a more delayed sense of burning. You can see these profiles on the graph. When formulated as a suspension for children, for the mother, ibuprofen is suspended as a powder in an orange-flavoured syrup. The orange flavour is intended to mask the taste of the drug. But does it? If you look at the graph, you can see that the orange flavour gives an immediate taste sensation. You know when you've been tangoed. But do you think it actually masks the taste of the drug? No, because the profiles don't overlap. The patient gets a lovely sensation of orange before the bitterness kicks in and is then left with a burning sensation. Not good. Obviously, encapsulating a drug in a tablet or capsule provides much better taste masking than this, but you get the idea. Now we have looked at why we formulate, it's time to consider how we decide what drugs to formulate. If you work for a pharma company, you will see the medicinal chemists will synthesize a huge number of compounds that they reckon will be blockbuster drugs. But it takes billions of dollars and years of time to bring a drug product successfully to market. Most drug products fail during development. For every 10,000 potential drug substances synthesized by the chemists, only one will reach market. How then should a potential drug substance be selected for development? After all, it's a multi-billion-dollar question. And the answer is carefully and rationally. It's easy to think all you need to do is screen the compounds against a particular target and select the one with greatest efficacy. But if the most efficacious compound has disastrous physical or chemical properties, it will never make a successful drug product. What you need is a candidate with good, or at least reasonable, physical and chemical properties, and good or reasonable efficacy. A balance, in fact. Screening and selecting compounds based on their physical and chemical properties is the very essence of preformulation. I should note here that some properties of a molecule are a function of its chemical structure, while others result from interactions between molecules. Since we measure both types of properties, we term them physicochemical, presumably because chemico-physical sounds a bit odd. Chemical properties, as you might have guessed, are those that arise as a result of the chemical properties of the atoms in the molecule, so we say they are intrinsic. They include solubility, pKa, if the molecule is an acid or base, partition coefficient, hygroscopicity, and stability, amongst others. Physical properties are a function of how the molecules pack together, the physical form. We call them derived properties, and they include melting point, enthalpy of fusion, physical form, amorphous or crystalline for instance, size, shape, density and so on. So, as I noted earlier, you may not select the most efficacious potential drug substance if there are others with more favourable physicochemical properties. Of course, since preformulation is the first stage of development, the clue is in the name, it occurs at a point when there may not be much of each potential drug substance available, only a few milligrams. Which properties should be measured first, given there might be so little material available? The answer is solubility and partition coefficient. These can often be measured at the same time, although I'm not going to discuss that here as you have separate lectures for that. What I will say though is that these two are the first properties measured because no drug can be absorbed unless it is in solution, and two, to be absorbed, a drug must cross cell membranes, and the partition coefficient is a reasonable indicator of how well it can do this. Recognising this, many years ago the Biopharmaceutical Classification System, or BCS, was proposed. Essentially, this ranks the likely developability of a molecule based on its solubility and its partition coefficient, and therefore permeability. A BCS class 1 compound has high solubility and high permeability, and so is considered the easiest to develop, green on my diagram. A BCS class 2 compound has low solubility but high permeability. There are many formulation strategies that we can use to improve solubility, so these compounds are usually okay to develop too, because once they are in solution, they should be absorbed quite well. BCS class 3 compounds have high solubility but low permeability. Since absorption may be driven by a concentration gradient, a class 3 compound may be okay if the solubility is high enough that sufficient drug is absorbed to exert a pharmacological effect. That leaves class 4 compounds, which have low everything. These can be challenging to develop unless they are effective at particularly low doses, in which case if you get enough of the drug into the solution, some will be absorbed, and that will be enough to elicit an effect. The itraconazole formulation I mentioned earlier is an example of a successful BCS class 4 compound. On the screen is a graph showing the BCS classes of 123 top-selling drug products, and you can see the majority are classes 1 to 3, for the reasons I just noted, although being class 4 is not an absolute barrier. Right, we are done. Here are the take-home points. Drug substances are formulated into drug products for many reasons, but control of dose and taste are the main factors. The simplest product will always be the marketed product. When selecting a potential drug substance to be developed, it is easy to think the decision will be on efficacy alone, but in reality, selecting a compound with decent physicochemical properties is a much safer option. Measuring these properties and using them to make a rational decision on candidate selection is the concept of preformulation. I hope you enjoyed the lecture and the concepts made sense. If they didn't, play the video again and see how you get on. If you're still confused, drop me an email or leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting the like button or, even better, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And I'll see you again soon.